There are moments in life that split everything into before and after. For me, it was a whisper. Just 5 words. You're not one of us. They didn't scream it. No, that would have been too honest.
Too raw.
Instead, they said it like a verdict already decided behind closed doors, spoken without emotion, like they were informing me of the weather. As if the world hadn't just collapsed beneath my feet. My name is Rachel Carter, and this is the story I never thought I'd tell. Not because I was too afraid, but because, for a long time, I didn't believe anyone would care. When you've been cast out, ignored, and turned into a stranger by people you once considered your own, silence starts to feel like the only safe place left. But silence can't hold pain forever. Eventually, it spills. Let me take you back, not just to the day everything changed, but to the weight of the months that led up to it. Let me show you what it feels like to be surrounded by people who smile to your face and stab you with their absence when you need them most. Let me walk you through the empty rooms, the unanswered messages, the cold shoulders disguised as indifference. I wasn't always this hardened. I wasn't always this aware. Back then, I believed in the warmth of people. I believed in shared laughter and sacred promises. I believed that when people say you're family, they mean it, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. I believed in the power of chosen families, and that blood wasn't the only bond that mattered. I was wrong. It all began in Willow Creek, a town small enough for everyone to know your middle name and big enough to forget your face when you needed remembering. My mother and I moved there when I was 10. She was trying to escape a marriage that had worn her down to whispers and bruised dreams. We arrived with 2 suitcases, a beaten-up minivan, and a promise between us. We're starting fresh. Willow Creek felt like something out of a Hallmark movie. Red brick houses, a bakery that smelled like childhood, and church bells that rang every Sunday like clockwork. People waved from porches and smiled with their eyes, until you looked too closely. I wanted to belong more than anything. And for a while I thought I did. There was a group, 5 of them. Madison, Claire, Jenna, Brielle, and Haley. The golden girls of Willow Creek High. Blonde hair, matching backpacks, and the kind of confidence that came with old money and family names carved into the town's history. They weren't cruel, not overtly. They were warm enough to keep you close, but distant enough to remind you where you stood. And somehow, in junior year, they pulled me in. It started with hallway smiles, then invitations to sit with them at lunch. They liked my sarcasm. They liked how I could make a room laugh without trying. They said I was different, a word that sounded like praise when it came with a seat at their table. Madison was the unofficial leader. Her father owned half the real estate in town, and her mother ran the school board with an iron grip disguised in pearls. Madison had a way of making you feel seen until she didn't. She'd tilt her head when she asked questions, like she was already judging your answer. "You're so real," she told me once, like it was a compliment. "You don't try too hard." Back then, I clung to crumbs like they were feasts. I was invited to birthdays, to bonfires, to brunches that felt like movie sets. I started dressing like them, speaking like them. I muted pieces of myself just to match the noise. I thought if I kept shrinking, they'd make space. But you can only fold yourself so small before something inside you snaps. The first crack came quietly. It always does. One Friday night, I showed up to a party I was told we were all going to. I wore the outfit Madison helped me pick. I even curled my hair the way she showed me. But when I walked in, they weren't there. And when I texted the group chat, I saw it 3 dots, then nothing. No reply. Hours passed. I waited. The next morning, they acted like I'd misunderstood. "Oh no, Rachel," Claire said sweetly. "We ended up just hanging at Madison's last minute." It wasn't really a thing. But I knew. They had a plan. I wasn't part of it. Still, I stayed. Because when you've fought so long to belong, walking away feels like failure. It's easier to keep convincing yourself you're just being paranoid, until they make it impossible to lie to yourself anymore. It was the 3rd week of senior year. I walked into the cafeteria expecting nothing. The usual table. The usual nods. But this time no one moved. No one looked up.
My spot was taken.
And not by accident. I stood there for 10 seconds longer than I should have, my tray trembling slightly in my hand. Jenna laughed at something on her phone. Madison looked right through me. I didn't make a scene. I never do. I turned around and sat 2 tables down, pretending I had a headache, pretending I wanted to be alone. That night, I cried into my pillow like I was 10 years old again. I told myself it was fine, that I didn't care, that I was better off. But the truth? It hurt like hell. The worst kind of pain is the one that doesn't leave bruises. It just lives inside you, whispering lies about your worth every time you see a photo you're not tagged in, every time you hear them laugh down the hallway, every time you remember how much of yourself you gave to people who treated you like an accessory. I started spending lunches in the library. I got closer to a quiet girl named Daddy, who painted strange things and never apologized for her existence. I started writing again. Stories about people who didn't beg to be loved, people who walked away before the fire consumed them. I thought that chapter was closed. I really did. Until last summer. I was sitting at a coffee shop in Denver, sipping iced tea and reviewing edits for a short story that had just been accepted in a local magazine. I'd finally moved away, started college, built a life that had nothing to do with Willow Creek. I was proud. Quietly, steadily proud. Then I heard my name. Rachel. I turned. Madison. Older, but not different. Polished. Lipstick just dark enough to look sophisticated. She smiled like nothing had ever happened. God, I wasn't sure if it was you. How long has it been? I stood slowly. My heart didn't race the way I expected it to. Instead, I felt calm, detached. Since you made it clear I wasn't one of you? I said. Her smile flickered. You still remember that? No one forgets being erased, Madison. There was a silence. Heavy. Thick with the weight of unspoken apologies. Then she said something I wasn't prepared for. We were wrong. 3 words. Simple. Soft. Almost cowardly. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. She sat down anyway. And just like that, they started coming back. One by one. Messages. Follows. Random "how have you been?" texts. Invitations to meet up just to catch up. The same people who once pushed me out like I was nothing were now trying to find a way back in. But something had changed. Me. I wasn't the same girl who begged to belong. I wasn't the one who curled her hair just to feel seen. I had become someone who no longer asked for a seat at someone else's table. I was building my own. And the funny thing? Now, they were asking if they could sit with me. People think reinvention starts when you leave a place. But it really begins the moment you admit you no longer fit where you are. I didn't realize that until years after Willow Creek. Back when I was still trying to survive inside it, I just thought I was broken, missing some essential quality that made people gravitate toward each other. But I wasn't broken. I was just different. And in a town like that, different was dangerous. That if there's one person who taught me how to survive being the outsider, it was my mom. Evelyn Carter, sharp-minded, soft-spoken, and stronger than she ever gave herself credit for. She was only 28 when she packed our lives into a minivan and drove away from a marriage that had turned into a ghost house. I remember the last thing she said as we crossed the state line into Colorado. We may not have much, Rachel, but we have peace. And we'll build from there. Evelyn worked as a nurse at the local hospital. Long shifts, tired feet, and eyes that sometimes looked a little too empty. But she never stopped smiling at me. Never made me feel like I was the burden she had to carry. She was my home. But even with her strength, she didn't always see how much I was struggling. I didn't want her to. I wanted to be her reason for joy, not another weight to carry. She knew I had trouble fitting in. She saw the changes in me, how I went from loud and opinionated to quiet and cautious. But every time she asked, I just smiled and said school was fine. Because what else do you say when you're slowly becoming invisible? People like Madison aren't just people, they're institutions. From the moment you meet them, they feel larger than life. Like everything they touch turns golden, and if you're lucky enough to be close to them, maybe some of that gold rubs off on you. Madison Lowell, Queen Bee. Her house was where secrets were traded like currency. She always smelled like expensive perfume and entitlement. She could cut someone with a compliment. She loved to say things like, "We should totally get coffee sometime," to people she had no intention of ever speaking to again. She knew how to control the narrative without ever appearing to do so. Claire Hamilton, the one with the sweetest face and the sharpest tongue. Claire was a master of passive aggression, always dressed like she walked out of a fashion catalog. She was the one who smiled while excluding you. Jenna Bell, funny, outgoing, the life of the party. She was the one I trusted the most in the beginning because she seemed real. Until the night I caught her forwarding one of my messages to Madison with the caption, "Can you believe this girl?" Brielle Carter, no relation, the quiet one. The observer. She rarely said much, but she was always there, watching, absorbing, storing everything like data. I often wondered if she felt as out of place as I did, but I never had the courage to ask. Haley Sampson, the pretty one. The effortlessly beautiful girl who always had someone to carry her backpack or braid her hair during free periods. She didn't say much, but her silence was complicit. When I was being pushed out, Haley was the one who avoided eye contact the most. With them, I felt both included and disposable. They loved me when I was amusing, when I gave them a new perspective, a new style, a funny take on something. But the moment I started shining in ways they didn't control, I became a threat. They loved difference as long as it didn't outshine their sameness. And once that line was crossed, the exile began. If there was one person who reminded me that authenticity still existed, it was Addie. She was the opposite of everything the golden circle represented. Messy hair, black nail polish, and sketchbooks filled with strange, beautiful things. She wore secondhand clothes like armor and never smiled unless she meant it. I met Addie after I stopped sitting with the group. We shared a table in the library. At first, we didn't speak. Then one day, she noticed the bruised silence in my eyes and slid me a note. It said, "It hurts now, but you'll thank them later." I didn't know what she meant then, but I do now. Addie didn't try to fix me. She just let me be. We spent hours listening to music, drawing, dreaming of lives outside Willow Creek. She never asked why I wasn't with the others anymore. She didn't need to. Some people just see you. She was one of the first who did. He wasn't in the picture much. My mother left him when I was 9. I remember yelling, broken dishes, and a door that slammed one last time before silence took over. His name was Michael, and the last time I saw him, I was 12. He sent birthday cards for a while, then stopped. I used to wonder what made a person leave a child behind. Was it me? Was I too loud? Too sensitive? It took me years to realize his absence said nothing about me and everything about him. That realization became my first lesson in detachment. Before the friendship with the Golden Girls, I was free in ways I didn't appreciate. I wore mismatched clothes, sang loudly in hallways, and wrote poetry in the margins of my notebooks. I didn't care if people thought I was strange. I loved reading Sylvia Plath and drawing stars on my arms with blue ink pens. But slowly, I let it all fade. I stopped writing. I started wearing beige sweaters and nude lipstick. I replaced my eccentricity with approval. Because acceptance, especially in a place like Willow Creek, felt like survival. Now I realize I wasn't surviving. I was shrinking. And when they pushed me out, it was like being ripped from a dream I hadn't even realized had become a nightmare. It wasn't because they missed me. It was because I became someone they couldn't ignore. After moving to Denver for college, I started publishing essays and short stories online. One piece, titled "The Girl Who Didn't Belong," went viral. It was raw and honest. I didn't name names, but I painted the picture vividly enough that anyone from Willow Creek would recognize the brushstrokes. Suddenly, I wasn't a shadow. I was a voice. And people listened. Emails started trickling in. Old classmates, teachers, even strangers from town. Some thanked me. Some apologized. Some tried to reconnect. And then Madison messaged. Followed by Jenna. Then the rest. I never responded, not at first. I needed to make sure I wasn't falling back into the same trap. I had built something sacred. a life that didn't depend on their approval. But curiosity lingers like smoke. And when you've been shaped by a wound, sometimes you want to see if the knife still cuts. Me now. I'm not that girl anymore. Not the girl who shrinks to fit. Not the one who mistakes proximity for love. Not the one who waits for a seat at the table. I am the table now. I write stories about girls like me, outsiders, dreamers, the overlooked and underestimated. And the strange thing? Those stories have a way of finding people. They reach the quiet hearts who've spent their lives being told they don't belong. And they whisper, "You do." I don't know why the girls from my past came back. Maybe guilt. Maybe nostalgia. Maybe they simply wanted to rewrite the past because the present makes them uncomfortable. But the truth is, you don't get to call someone not one of us. And then turn around when they shine and say, "We missed you." I wish I could say that once they came back into my life, I simply turned them away with elegance and closure. That I didn't hesitate. That I didn't feel that old ache rise in my chest. But I did. Because wounds don't always heal clean. Sometimes they scar with tenderness still inside them. It started with a comment. I had just finished a guest panel for a podcast about healing through storytelling. After it aired, my inbox was flooded with supportive messages. But in the mix, there it was, a DM from Madison. "Just listen to your episode. You've really grown. I'd love to catch up sometime." No hard feelings, I hope. I stared at it for a long time. No hard feelings? The audacity of people who break you and then ask for softness in return. Still, I didn't delete the message. Because part of me wanted to understand. Was it guilt? Regret? Or something else? So I replied, "That depends. What is it you're hoping to catch up about?" And just like that, the door cracked open again. A week later, I found myself added to a group chat titled, "The OGs." Jenna, Claire, Brielle, and even Haley were in it. At first, it was lighthearted. Can you believe how old we are? Remember prom night? We need a reunion. But underneath it all, I could feel it, the unspoken tension. Like walking into a room that looks familiar, but something is off. The furniture has shifted. The photos are missing. And there's this humming noise you can't quite place. I didn't know what game they were playing, but I knew it wasn't innocent. Still, I watched. Observed. I let them talk. It was Jenna who slipped up first. "So, do you get paid for writing that stuff?" "That stuff? You mean the stories that saved me? That reached thousands of people who finally felt seen? That stuff?" I kept my response simple. "Yes." "Very well, actually." Silence. Then Brielle chimed in. "That's incredible, Rachel. I always knew you'd do something creative. You were just ahead of your time." Ahead of my time? No. I was just never allowed to be fully myself. And now that I was, that threatened them. They didn't come back because they miss me. They came back because I had become undeniable. It's funny how memory works. One trigger, and suddenly you're back in the moment like no time has passed. For me, it was the scent of vanilla body spray. I passed someone wearing it while walking to a bookstore, and I was transported. Back to that hallway. Back to the locker room. Back to the whispering and giggling. Back to the moment I realized they had created a fake group chat. One without me, where I was the joke, the subject, the entertainment. They had posted screenshots of my journal entries. Private thoughts I had shared with Jenna, twisted and mocked. The group chat was called Rachel's Rants. I remember standing there, my phone shaking in my hand, feeling like the floor had given way. They said I was too much, too sensitive, too intense. And I believed them. I let that moment become a blueprint for my self-worth for years. Now, here they were pretending it never happened. I started writing again. Not just essays. I began drafting a memoir, my story, unfiltered. And one night, I posted a teaser chapter online. It included a scene strikingly similar to that hallway moment. I changed names, but not the truth. The next morning, my phone exploded. Claire. Wow. Way to exaggerate your trauma for clout. Jenna. You could have at least warned us. Madison. So, this is what this was about. You wanted revenge. No. Not revenge. Redemption.
Truth.
But they didn't understand the difference. They thought silence was forgiveness. That moving on meant pretending it didn't hurt. But silence had teeth. And mine had been clenched long enough. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and began typing, not for the public.
For them.
You don't get to decide when the past is over. You called me, not one of you. And now, because I found a way to thrive without you, you want to rewrite history? I spent years healing from the games you played. You weren't just mean girls. You were architects of a kind of quiet cruelty that shapes how someone sees themselves. And still, I don't hate you. But I won't pretend. You made me question if I was worth loving. And now that I've found people who love me without conditions, you want to circle back? I hope you heal. I really do. But you're not owed access to who I am now. That version of me? She doesn't shrink anymore. Rachel. I hit send. Then I blocked the entire chat. It was quiet afterward. The kind of quiet that follows a storm. Not peaceful, but sacred. A few days later, I got an email from a journalist at an online culture site. Hi, Rachel. We're working on a piece about online memoirists and the backlash they sometimes face from people in their past. We'd love to feature your story. I agreed, cautiously. But once the article went live, it stirred a new kind of reaction. Some people celebrated me. Others accused me of weaponizing my trauma. And then, someone from Willow Creek leaked my original story to a gossip forum. They posted old photos. Started threads dissecting every part of my life. She was always dramatic. She's clearly still obsessed with high school. I don't buy half of it. Addie messaged me that night. Fame is a weird beast. But remember, your truth doesn't need permission to exist. She always knew what to say. Still, I felt the pressure rise. The world that once ignored me now had its eyes fixed on every word I said. But this time, I wasn't afraid. In the midst of all this, a strange opportunity arose. A literary agent reached out. She had read my online work and wanted to discuss representation.
Me.
The girl who once sat alone in the cafeteria. The girl who was told she was too much. Now I was being offered a book deal. I remember walking to the window after the call and looking out at the Denver skyline. The lights shimmered like stars on pavement. And I thought, they said I wasn't one of them. And they were right. I was never meant to be, because I was something more. Not a follower. Not a pawn in someone else's hierarchy. I was a storyteller. And in this world, that makes me powerful. Just when I thought the past had exhausted its last card, it dealt one more. A letter arrived in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a folded note. I read your story. And I just want you to know. I believed you then. I believe you now. I should have spoken up.
I'm sorry. Brielle.
The quiet one. She had watched, absorbed, said nothing. And now she spoke. It didn't erase the past. But it mattered. Because sometimes healing isn't loud. Sometimes it arrives in the smallest, softest acts. The night before my manuscript was due to the publisher, I couldn't sleep. My apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that amplifies everything inside you. My laptop sat open on the table, blinking at me, cursor pulsing like a heartbeat. The final chapter was half-written. I had shared everything, my pain, my betrayal, my rediscovery. But I had left out the final piece. The confrontation. The moment I truly saw them again, not as girls who wounded me, but as people. People who also carried their own shadows. It arrived in early spring. A white envelope. Embossed gold lettering. The kind of fancy stationery you only see in movies or weddings. It was a formal invitation to Haley's engagement party. What twisted corner of the universe thought this was necessary? Part of me wanted to burn it. But another part, deep and unsettling, felt curious. Why now? Why invite me? Of all people. Addie asked the same thing over lunch. You know it's a trap, right? She said, stirring her coffee. A trap for what? I asked. I'm not the same girl they could humiliate anymore. She studied me quietly before answering. Exactly. That's what makes you dangerous now. Dangerous. The word felt electric on my skin. I RSVP'd yes. Not for them.
For me.
The venue was stunning. A rustic lodge in the mountains outside Boulder, draped in string lights, candles, and fake cherry blossoms. I wore a sleek black jumpsuit. No frills. Just presence. I walked in, head high, spine straight. And the moment I did, silence followed me like a spotlight. Jenna was at the bar. Claire near the dance floor. Madison fake smiling beside a group of old classmates. And Haley, the bride-to-be, stood in the center, in a white dress that shimmered like frost. Their eyes widened when they saw me. But no one approached. I found a quiet corner, sipped my drink, and waited. It was Brielle, who came first. She looked different, softer, older, more grounded. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said. I nodded. Neither was I. She looked down, twisting the ring on her finger. A nervous tick. I meant what I wrote, she whispered. I should have said something back then. I saw what they did. I didn't have the courage to stand with you. I searched her face for a sign of performative guilt, but all I saw was sincerity. I appreciate that, I said. It's not about blame anymore. It's about honesty. We talked for a while. About life, regrets, motherhood, she had a baby now, and the way the past had followed both of us. Before she left, she said something I'll never forget. You turned your pain into a lighthouse. We all just stood in the dark. It was inevitable. She approached with a wine glass, her face tight with something between confidence and calculation.
So,
the famous writer, she said. I smiled. You must be proud of me, I replied. She laughed. You know, I read your story. Clever the way you changed our names. Thoughtful, even. But come on, Rachel. You made us into villains. I set down my drink. You made yourselves into villains, I said, tone level. I just wrote down what happened. She shifted, her smile fading. We were kids. Don't you think it's time to let it go? Funny, I said. That's exactly what I did. Let go. Of needing your approval. Of shrinking to fit your comfort. She didn't expect that. Jenna always won with silence or shame. But this wasn't high school. And I wasn't her echo anymore. I forgive you, I said softly. But I don't want anything from you. Not closure. Not friendship. Not your validation. She blinked. And for the first time, I saw it.
Fear.
Not of me, but of the version of me she couldn't control. I left the party early. Not out of defeat, but triumph. I didn't owe them anything. I had faced them, not as the broken girl I once was, but as the woman who had stitched herself back together. On the ride home, I opened my laptop. The cursor was still blinking. And finally, I knew how to end the book. I typed. Healing isn't loud. It doesn't always look like standing in front of your enemies and screaming your truth. Sometimes it looks like showing up with grace. Smiling at the people who once made you cry. And knowing you're no longer theirs to break. I clicked save. And just like that, the story was complete. Weeks later, I did something spontaneous. I drove back to Willow Creek. The town hadn't changed much. Same coffee shop. Same creaky bookstore. Same church on the corner where we used to sneak into the basement and tell ghost stories. I walked to my old high school. It was spring, and the cherry blossoms were blooming, just like the ones at Haley's party. I stood in front of the building and took a deep breath. The girl I was, the one who sat alone at lunch, cried in bathroom stalls and begged to belong, deserved this moment. So I closed my eyes and whispered, "You were always enough," even when they didn't see it. A soft breeze moved through the trees. And I swear, I felt her, my younger self, smile. Months later, the book was released. It hit bestseller lists. Book clubs picked it up. Interviews rolled in. People sent messages from across the world, saying, "I thought I was the only one." And one day, I received a handwritten note. It read, "I saw your book in the airport today. I'm not ready to talk, but I'm proud of you. Haley." I didn't need her words.
But they still meant something.
Because when you spend years aching to be seen, even the smallest acknowledgement can feel like a sunrise. Today, I live in Denver. I write.
I speak.
I teach creative writing at a small university. Addie and I still have our weekly coffee dates. Brielle and I check in now and then. The rest, I've released with love. Sometimes, I still wake up with that old ache. The fear that maybe somewhere deep down, I am too much. But then I remember. Too much is exactly what made me me. The storyteller. The survivor. The woman who chose to rise. There's something profoundly beautiful about surviving what was meant to break you. You don't always come out unscarred. You don't emerge glowing, with some magical sense of peace. More often, you come out shaking, unsure, but standing. And that is enough. That is everything. This story, while personal, is not unique. You've likely lived your own version of it. Maybe you've been left out of the group chat. Maybe someone looked you in the eyes and made you feel small. Maybe you've been told, directly or silently, that you don't belong. You're not enough. You'll never fit the mold. And maybe you've spent nights crying in silence, wondering why they didn't choose you, why they turned on you, why the people you would have protected with your life stood by and watched you fall. To you, I say this. You were never meant to belong in a place that required you to betray your essence. You were never created to fit in. You were designed to stand out. Your uniqueness, your sensitivity, your fire, your softness, those are not weaknesses. They are signatures of your soul. If the world doesn't understand them, that's not your flaw. It's their limitation. Maybe you still carry memories you can't talk about. Moments frozen in time. The hallway whisper that shattered your confidence. The look that made you question your worth. The silence after betrayal. Those scars? They're not your shame. They're your story. And stories, when owned, become power. Not because they change the past, but because they change you. I didn't write this story to reopen wounds or get revenge. I wrote it to reclaim my narrative. Because silence is where shame grows. And when you speak your truth, when you name the pain, it loses its power over you. No longer does it haunt your every step. No longer does it whisper lies in the dark. It becomes what it always should have been. A chapter. Not the whole book. Let go of needing them to understand. Let go of waiting for an apology that may never come. Let go of reshaping yourself to be palatable. Let go of pretending it didn't hurt. Yes, it hurt. It cut deep. It changed you. But pain is not a prison. It's a passage. You are not broken because you were left out. You are not weak because you felt everything. You are not too much for people who never knew how to hold someone like you. You are exactly enough. And now you get to write your ending. If you could speak to the version of you that was most lost, most heartbroken, what would you say? Would you hold her? Would you remind her that the mirror they shattered isn't your only reflection? Would you whisper, "You make it out. Stronger.
Softer.
Wiser." I hope you would. Because that girl, she's still inside you. And she's still waiting to be told she was never the problem. I used to think the goal was to prove them wrong. To shine so brightly that they'd regret ever doubting me. But over time I realized I don't want to live in a way that seeks their regret. I want to live in a way that honors the girl I once was. The one who cried in isolation but still showed up. The one who kept loving, even after rejection.
The one who chose not to become like them.
That's power. That's peace. Thank you. Because you saying, "You're not one of us," was the most unexpected gift. It forced me to stop begging for scraps of acceptance. It made me look inward and redefine my worth. It taught me how to build a table where everyone like me had a seat.
And now?
Now I don't care to be one of them. Because I've become something else entirely. Someone who belongs wholly to herself. So, here's my invitation to you reading this. Tell your story. Even if your voice shakes. Even if no one claps. Even if the people who hurt you pretend it never happened. Tell it for the you that needed someone to do it first. Because, when you do, you give permission to others to speak. You break chains. You create bridges. You make healing contagious. Forgiveness or revenge. Silence or truth. Conformity or courage. You don't have to answer now. But one day, the choice will rise before you. And I hope, With every fiber of your soul, you choose you. Not the version of you they liked. Not the watered-down version they could accept. But the real, raw, radiant version that was always worthy of love. If you've ever sat at a lunch table and felt invisible, if you've ever laughed at jokes that hurt just to feel included, if you've ever cried over friends who turned cold overnight, you're not alone. And, more importantly, you're going to be okay. More than okay. One day, you'll look back and realize they didn't break you. They revealed you. And what they saw scared them, not because you were weak, but because you were unshakably real. And realness can't be faked, manipulated, or controlled. It shines. Even through the cracks. Especially through the cracks. So go ahead. Tell your truth. Take up space. Stand tall. You're not just one of them. You're one of a kind.